Welcome to my channel. In today's lesson, we'll help you take your English skills from basic to confident, ensuring you're ready for any situation life throws at you. Tired of feeling lost in everyday conversations? Learn how to confidently navigate real-life situations with these practical English tips that will make you feel like a pro. From ordering your favorite latte to chatting with your friends. Whether you're struggling to apply your English skills in real-world scenarios or just need a little extra boost, this video is your ultimate guide to mastering everyday interactions. From ordering food at a restaurant to engaging in casual conversations with people around you, we've got you covered. By the end of this video, you'll unlock the power of English in your daily life. Discover simple, easy-to-apply strategies that will help you confidently communicate in any situation. Imagine making small talk with ease, ordering groceries without a hitch, or chatting comfortably with friends. This lesson is designed to empower you and make you feel more comfortable and fluent. So, let's dive in and turn everyday situations into opportunities for practice and growth. Everyday English, stepping out of the textbook. I'll never forget the first time I tried to use my English outside of the classroom. It wasn't an exam, no grammar drills, or vocabulary tests. I was at a coffee shop, standing in line to order a latte. I had practiced in my head, "I'd like a latte, please," over and over. But when it was my turn, I froze. The barista flashed a friendly smile and asked, "What size would you like?" My mind went blank. I had prepared for the basics, ordering a coffee, sure, but I hadn't anticipated the quick-fire questions or the need for small talk. I stuttered out an unsure, medium, and immediately felt embarrassed. The transaction was smooth in the end, but that experience stuck with me. I realized that all the English I had learned from textbooks wasn't enough to truly prepare me for real-life situations. Textbooks are helpful, no doubt. They give us the foundation of grammar and vocabulary, but they often feel detached from the reality of communication. The conversations you learn in class are overly structured, formal, and sometimes even outdated. We spend hours memorizing rules and practicing perfect sentence structures. But when it comes to actually speaking in a coffee shop, a restaurant, or at the grocery store, the language can feel different. People don't speak like textbooks. They're not always careful about grammar or pronunciation. Instead, they focus on efficiency, clarity, and sometimes even humor. Take small talk, for instance. You won't find many lessons on it in traditional textbooks, but it's something you encounter every day. When you greet someone with, "How are you?" In the real world, you're not expecting an essay-length response. In fact, most people simply say, "Good" or "not bad," even if they're going through a tough time. In the textbook version of English, we might have a full conversation about emotions and mental states, but that's not how we engage in casual daily conversations. Small talk is often light, easy, and more about making a connection than saying something profound. Then there's the problem of tone. English isn't just about the words you say. It's also about how you say them. In textbooks, we often learn polite phrases like, "excuse me," or "could you please?" But when you're speaking in real life, It's not just about the words themselves. It's about the way you say them, the context, and even your body language. It's all part of the puzzle that textbooks don't always explain. Take the phrase, "Can I get a coffee?" If you said it politely, you might sound like a well-mannered customer. But say it with the right tone and expression, and it could sound more casual, friendly, and even humorous. That's the gap between textbook English and everyday English, the nuances that make conversations feel natural. Real-life English often relies on informal expressions, slang, idioms, and context. It's about learning to adapt to different situations and adjusting your language to fit the environment. For example, if you're chatting with a colleague at work, your tone and choice of words will likely be different than if you're talking to a friend or ordering a takeaway. The language you use can shift based on your relationship with the person, their mood, and even the setting. Yet, in textbooks, everything is treated as if every situation is the same, and the language you use should follow strict rules. Building confidence in using English comes from practicing in real-world contexts, not just memorizing dialogues from a book. It's about getting comfortable with those moments where you're not sure what the right word or phrase is, but choosing something and going with it anyway. I remember once at a party, I was talking to someone about my work. In the middle of the conversation, I couldn't think of a word to describe something I was doing, and I hesitated for a second. Then, I just used a simpler word instead. Project instead of initiative. It wasn't technically the best word choice, but the person I was talking to didn't care. We kept the conversation going, and I wasn't held back by worrying about the correct word. The key was in continuing the conversation, adjusting to the situation, and not letting the fear of making mistakes stop me from expressing myself. One of the most important things to recognize when stepping out of the textbook is that English in the real world isn't a strict set of rules. It's a living, breathing language. In real conversations, people want to understand you, not just hear perfectly structured sentences. And the best way to build confidence in real conversations is to expose yourself to them. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, read articles, and even try talking to native speakers. The more you immerse yourself in authentic situations, the more you'll start to internalize the way English is actually used in everyday life. The other major hurdle is understanding how to handle different accents, slang, and cultural references. English isn't spoken the same way everywhere. The English used in London sounds different than the English spoken in New York or Sydney. Even within one city, people might have different dialects or accents, and these can affect the way you understand and interact with them. While textbooks may give you an idea of the standard version of English, real life requires an understanding of regional variations. It can be a bit overwhelming at first, but it's important to remember that just because you don't understand every word or phrase someone says, it doesn't mean you've failed. You can ask them to clarify, or you can use context to figure out what they mean. Another factor that textbooks rarely cover is how to handle misunderstandings. In a textbook, everything is perfectly clear and communication flows smoothly. But in the real world, you're going to miss things, misunderstand words, or even get the wrong impression entirely. That's normal. In fact, it's part of the learning process. When someone says something you don't understand, don't be afraid to ask them to repeat it or explain. You can use simple phrases like, "Sorry, can you say that again?" or "I didn't quite catch that." Most people will appreciate your effort and be more than happy to help you out. The key is not to be embarrassed or discouraged when you don't understand something. It's all part of the journey to mastering English in real-life contexts. So, how can we bridge the gap between textbook English and real-life English? First and foremost, you need to practice speaking as much as possible. Yes, grammar and vocabulary are important, but they only go so far. The more you speak, the more you'll begin to internalize the rhythm, the informal expressions, and the subtle ways we connect with others. Try shadowing native speakers in movies or TV shows. Practice imitating their intonation, tone, and pace. You can even record yourself speaking and listen back to see where you might improve. The key to success is not perfection, but progress. Even when you make mistakes, you're learning something valuable. Remember, the goal is not to sound like a native speaker, but to feel comfortable expressing yourself and understanding others in a variety of situations. No one expects perfection in real-world conversations. People are more focused on connecting, understanding, and having a meaningful exchange, and that's the ultimate goal of communication. In the end, stepping out of the textbook and into real-world English is all about building confidence. It's about learning to trust yourself, taking risks with your language, and not being afraid to make mistakes. Each conversation you have, no matter how small, is a chance to improve. And before you know it, those textbook phrases will become second nature, and you'll be handling everyday English situations like a pro. Chapter 2: Navigating the Restaurant, Food and Fun. So now that we've talked about how textbooks don't always prepare you for the nuances of real-life English, let's dive into a scenario that many of us face regularly: ordering food at a restaurant. Whether you're in your home country or traveling abroad, the process can be daunting if you're not sure what to say or how to phrase your request. I know this from experience. There was a time when I felt anxious about ordering food, worried I might not understand the menu or say something wrong. But with a little practice and knowing a few key phrases, you can go from feeling nervous to being completely confident when ordering. Let's start with the basics. You're at a restaurant and the waiter approaches. The first step is usually deciding what you want to eat. Now, this is where textbooks can be helpful. They often teach us specific vocabulary words related to food. However, real-life English is all about how we use those words in context. So, if you're at the counter or seated at a table and ready to order, you could say, "Can I get a burger with fries, please?" This is a polite and common way to place an order. It's casual but still respectful, and it uses "can I get," a phrase that's widely understood and used in many situations, not just at restaurants. If you're not sure what to order or want to ask more about the menu, it's totally normal to ask questions. For example, if you're looking for a vegetarian option, you might ask, "Is there anything on the menu that's vegetarian?" This way, you're being direct but polite, and you're opening up the conversation so the server can guide you to something that meets your needs. Now, let's say you've decided on your meal, but you'd like to customize it a bit. Maybe you want a burger without cheese, or perhaps you want to swap the fries for a side salad. In cases like these, it's important to use polite phrases to ask for modifications or substitutions. Instead of simply saying, "I don't want cheese," a more polite way would be to say, "Could you please make it without cheese?" This softens the request and makes it sound more courteous. If you're unsure about whether modifications are allowed, or if you're ordering something a little more complex, you can use a phrase like, "Would it be possible to substitute the fries with a side salad?" Or, "Could you please swap the dressing for something lighter?" This shows respect for the restaurant's policy and opens the door for further conversation if the request can't be accommodated. Often, restaurants are willing to make substitutions as long as they're asked politely. And let's not forget about drinks. If you're ordering something to drink, you can use similar phrasing. For example, "I'd like a large iced tea, please." Or if you want to make a request, like for your drink to be served with less ice, you could say, "Could you please give me my iced tea with less ice?" Again, it's not about using fancy words. It's about sounding polite and clear and ensuring that you get what you want without confusion. What if you want to ask about specials or recommendations? This is where a little curiosity can go a long way. You could ask, "What's the special today?" Or, "Do you have any recommendations?" These questions are simple and effective ways to engage with the waiter or waitress. You're showing interest in what they have to offer, and you're more likely to get an insightful answer. Let's also touch on the issue of timing. Sometimes you'll need to ask about how long the food will take. If you're in a hurry or simply want to know when you can expect your meal, a polite inquiry like, "How long will it take for my meal to be ready?" can be useful. It's straightforward, but doesn't come across as impatient or demanding. Remember, the more conversational and respectful you are, the more likely the staff will be eager to help. Now, what happens when there's a problem with the meal? Let's say you've ordered something, but it doesn't come out as expected. Maybe they got the order wrong, or the food isn't to your liking. In these situations, it's important to be calm and polite. Instead of saying, "This isn't what I ordered," you might try something like, "I'm sorry, I think there's been a mistake. Could you please bring me what I ordered?" This way, you're pointing out the issue without sounding accusatory or frustrated. Most servers will appreciate your respectful approach, and they'll be happy to correct the mistake. If the food is fine, but maybe you're just not happy with a particular ingredient or part of your dish, you could say something like, "I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I'm enjoying the sauce. Would it be possible to try something else instead?" This opens up a dialogue without being confrontational. It's important to remember that in many situations, restaurants want you to enjoy your meal, and if there's a problem, they'll likely offer to fix it if you ask nicely. But what if you're dining with others, and you want to discuss the menu with your companions? You can use phrases like, "What are you getting?" Or, "Have you tried the pasta here? It's supposed to be really good." These are casual, friendly ways to chat about the meal, and they help create a more relaxed atmosphere, which can make you feel more comfortable ordering. Finally, let's talk about paying. Once you're done and ready to settle the bill, you can simply ask, "Could we have the check, please?" Or, "Can I pay by card?" These are common, polite ways to wrap up your meal. If you're splitting the bill, it's common to say, "Could we split the bill, please?" Or, "Let's go halves on the bill." These phrases are widely used and understood, making them great options when you're sharing a meal with friends. In summary, ordering food at a restaurant doesn't have to be stressful if you know a few key phrases. From asking for your meal to making special requests, using polite and clear English will make the experience smoother for both you and the server. Always remember that it's not just about the words you use, it's about how you say them. With a little practice, you'll go from feeling uncertain to confidently navigating restaurant conversations with ease. So, next time you're out to eat, try using these phrases and see how much easier it is to order exactly what you want, without the stress. Chapter 3: Social Scenarios, Making Friends and Connecting. Continuing from where we left off, navigating real-life English situations, one of the most common and sometimes nerve-wracking things to do is start conversations with new people. Whether you're at a party, meeting someone at work, or just sitting next to someone on the bus, initiating and maintaining conversations can feel challenging, especially if you're worried about making mistakes. But remember, just like ordering food or asking for directions, the key is to keep it simple and stay authentic. So let's look at how you can approach social situations and start connecting with people naturally in English. When you first meet someone, a simple greeting is all you need to begin a conversation. A phrase like, "Hi, how are you?" is universal and friendly. It's a great way to show that you're approachable and ready to chat. Most people respond with something like, "I'm good, thanks. How about you?" At this point, you could either share how you're doing or ask them something about their day, which leads us to the next part of the conversation: questions. The key to keeping the conversation going is asking questions, but more than just any questions. Questions that invite the other person to share a bit more about themselves. A natural follow-up could be asking about something neutral and easy to answer, like, "What's your name?" If you haven't already introduced yourself, this is a good way to show interest and learn more about the other person. When they respond, remember to introduce yourself too. "Nice to meet you." Name. This is basic, but crucial, as it sets the tone for the conversation to continue. Once you've gotten the introductions out of the way, you might want to ask about their background. Questions like, "Where are you from?" or "Where did you grow up?" are casual and give the other person a chance to talk about their roots. People generally love to talk about where they're from, especially if it's somewhere interesting or unique. For example, if someone says, "I'm from Brazil," you could say, "Oh, that's cool. What part of Brazil?" This shows you're listening and encourages the other person to keep talking. It also gives you the opportunity to learn something new, and that keeps the conversation flowing. Another easy question to ask is, "What do you do for work?" This is a classic question that works in almost any setting, whether it's a formal event, a social gathering, or even just casual chat in a coffee shop. If they mention their job, try to follow up with questions like, "How did you get into that?" or What's your favorite part of your job? These follow-up questions show that you're genuinely interested in what they do and are looking to engage on a deeper level than just small talk. What's important here is not to let the conversation become one-sided. Sometimes, when people are nervous or unsure of how to keep things going, they tend to keep asking the other person questions without offering much about themselves. This can make the conversation feel a bit like an interview. If you notice that happening, try to share something about yourself too. For example, if you ask, "Where are you from?" and they tell you they're from Canada, you could follow up with, "That's awesome. I've always wanted to visit Canada. I've heard Toronto is great." This way, the conversation becomes more of a two-way exchange, and both people get the chance to talk and share. A great way to keep the conversation going is by showing genuine interest in the other person's responses. For example, if they tell you they're a teacher, you could ask, "What age group do you teach?" Or, "What subjects do you like teaching the most?" These types of questions not only keep the conversation going, but also show that you're interested in the other person's life and experiences. People generally enjoy talking about things they're passionate about, so asking specific questions allows them to share more. If at any point the conversation starts to stall, don't panic. Silence is normal. You can always shift the conversation to something more general or neutral. For example, you could say, "So, have you seen any good movies or shows recently?" Or, "What do you like to do in your free time?" These open-ended questions are perfect for filling any awkward pauses and can lead to more exciting topics. Another great technique is to use the environment around you to fuel conversation. For example, if you're at a party or gathering, you might notice something in the room that could be a conversation starter. You could say, "I love the music they're playing here. Do you like this kind of music?" Or, "This place has such a cool vibe. Have you been here before?" These types of questions help break the ice and give the other person something to relate to, making it easier to continue the conversation. When you're talking with someone, it's also important to pay attention to nonverbal cues. Sometimes people may not verbally express they're interested in the conversation, but their body language can tell you a lot. If someone is leaning in, making eye contact, and nodding while you speak, that's a sign they're engaged. If, however, they're looking around the room or seem distracted, it may be a sign they're not as interested in continuing the conversation. In such cases, it's okay to politely wrap it up and maybe ask, "Well, it was nice talking to you. Hopefully, we can chat again soon." This way, you're still being courteous, but also respecting the other person's space. Of course, the most important thing when trying to connect with others is to be genuine. If you're only asking questions to fill the silence, people can usually sense that. It's much better to focus on connecting with them and showing interest in what they say. Remember that real conversations are about finding common ground and sharing stories, not just about asking a checklist of questions. Sometimes, even when you follow all the tips, a conversation might not flow as smoothly as you hope. That's completely okay. Not every conversation will be easy, and it's normal to experience some awkwardness. But don't let that discourage you. The more you practice speaking with different people, the better you'll become at finding topics of interest and keeping things moving smoothly. Another helpful trick for making friends and building connections is to share personal stories or interests. You don't have to overshare or get too personal too quickly, but adding little bits about your own life helps others see the real you. If they ask you, "What do you do for fun?" and you love hiking, you might say, "I really enjoy hiking on the weekends. There's a great trail near my house. Do you enjoy being outdoors?" This kind of personal detail adds warmth to the conversation and opens the door for the other person to share their own experiences. Lastly, when the conversation is winding down, be sure to end it on a positive note. A simple, "It was really nice talking to you," or "I hope we get to chat again soon," leaves the door open for future connections. Even if the conversation didn't go as smoothly as you wanted, leaving on a positive note ensures that you've left a good impression. To wrap it up, making friends and connecting with people in English doesn't have to be difficult. The trick is to start with simple, open-ended questions, show genuine interest, and keep the conversation flowing naturally. Use follow-up questions to keep things going and be ready to share a little about yourself too. The more you practice these social scenarios, the easier and more natural they will become. So, the next time you meet someone new, remember that the key to building a great conversation is being kind, curious, and engaged. Chapter 4. Practice Makes Perfect. Tips for Confidence. Now that we've explored how to start conversations and connect with people, let's focus on something equally important: confidence. One of the best ways to gain confidence in speaking English is simply through practice. I know that sounds obvious, but it's easy to forget how much improvement comes from just speaking regularly. Whether you're practicing ordering food at a restaurant, chatting with a new acquaintance, or even having a casual conversation with a friend, the key to getting better is consistency. A lot of people, especially early on in their learning journey, tend to shy away from speaking because they fear making mistakes. But here's the thing: mistakes are part of the process. They're how we learn and improve. The more you speak, the more comfortable you'll become with the language, and soon enough, you'll start to notice that your hesitation is replaced by confidence. Speaking isn't just about knowing the right words. It's about becoming familiar with the rhythm and flow of the language, so it feels more natural. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. You wouldn't expect to be perfect right away, but with practice, you'll gain balance and control. One of the most effective ways to practice speaking is by finding a language partner. This could be someone who is also learning English or a native speaker who's open to helping you improve. Having someone to practice with makes all the difference. You can get instant feedback, ask questions, and really immerse yourself in the language. Plus, practicing with a partner is a great way to simulate real-life conversations. You can try role-playing different situations, like ordering food, making plans, or even talking about your day. It's also less intimidating than speaking in front of a large group, which makes it easier to make mistakes and learn from them. And don't worry about being perfect. The goal is communication, not perfection. But where do you find these language partners? The good news is, it's easier than ever to connect with people from around the world. Online language exchange platforms like Tandem or HelloTalk allow you to connect with people who are learning your native language while you help them with English. You can text, voice chat, or even video call, making it super easy to fit practice into your schedule. Another option is joining conversation groups or clubs in your community, where you can meet people who are also interested in practicing English. Many cities have language meetups, and even if you're shy, these groups can help you get comfortable in a group setting, which is invaluable for your overall language growth. If you're unable to find a language partner, don't worry. There are other resources you can use to practice speaking. Language learning apps like Duolingo, Babbel, or Memrise can supplement your practice and help reinforce vocabulary and grammar. While these apps are fantastic for vocabulary building and learning grammar structures, many of them also have speaking exercises that you can use to practice pronunciation and fluency. You can say a word or phrase into your phone, and the app will evaluate your pronunciation, which can be a great way to keep improving. But remember, while apps are helpful, they should never replace real conversations. They're a fantastic tool, but speaking with real people is irreplaceable when it comes to gaining confidence. Another great online tool is video platforms like YouTube, where you can find language learning channels that focus on conversational English. You can watch and listen to real-life dialogues, and then try repeating what you hear. This kind of shadowing technique, where you mimic native speakers, is incredibly powerful for building fluency. Listening to native speakers and imitating their tone, rhythm, and accent helps you get used to the flow of natural speech, which is often faster and more fluid than what you'd find in textbooks. Over time, you'll notice that you can start to pick up on those subtle details that make speech sound more natural, things like intonation, stress, and pauses. Also, don't forget about podcasts. There are countless English language podcasts for learners at all levels, and many of them are focused on conversation practice. The beauty of podcasts is that you can listen while doing other things, like commuting or cooking, so you can get some practice in even when you don't have a lot of free time. There are podcasts that focus on different accents, different slang, and everyday topics, all of which help you understand how English is spoken in various situations. You could listen to a podcast episode and then try to summarize what you heard, or even repeat some phrases and practice speaking them aloud. This way, you're combining both listening and speaking practice, which are essential skills to develop. Let's also talk about self-study methods. If you're not always able to find a language partner, you can still practice speaking by yourself. Yes, it may feel a little strange at first, but trust me, it works. Try talking out loud to yourself, describing your day, or practicing a scenario like ordering food, booking a hotel room, or making small talk. Even if no one is listening, you're training your mouth and brain to form sentences more easily. Plus, this gives you the opportunity to practice without worrying about being judged or making mistakes in front of someone else. It's also a great way to build fluency and get used to speaking without pausing too much to search for words. You can practice speaking in front of a mirror or record yourself and listen to how you sound. You may notice areas where you need improvement, and it will give you the chance to fix them on your own. It's important to make speaking a daily habit. Even if it's just for a few minutes a day, practicing every day is far more effective than trying to cram all your practice into 1 or 2 sessions each week. Consistency is key to building fluency and confidence. So, make it part of your routine, like brushing your teeth or having a cup of coffee. You don't need to commit to long practice sessions. Just try to incorporate small amounts of speaking into your day, and over time, you'll notice significant improvements. And finally, keep track of your progress. This is crucial because, as we often get caught up in our day-to-day challenges, it's easy to forget how far we've come. Every time you have a conversation, whether it's with a stranger or a language partner, take a moment to reflect on what went well. What phrases did you use that felt natural? What new words did you learn? Keeping a journal or recording your progress can help you stay motivated and recognize your growth over time. To sum it up, practicing speaking English regularly is the best way to build confidence. Whether you're using language apps, finding a language partner, or practicing on your own, consistency and real-life interactions are key. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become, and before you know it, English will feel like a natural part of your everyday life. Keep practicing, stay patient with yourself, and celebrate every little milestone along the way. You're on the right track. Chapter 5. Beyond the Basics. Expanding your vocabulary. As we continue building confidence in real-life conversations, one area that will truly set you apart in speaking English is your vocabulary. We've already discussed how important it is to practice regularly, but once you've got the basics down, it's time to expand. The more words you know, the more expressive and fluent you'll become. Let's dive into some practical ways to expand your vocabulary and make your English sound more natural and versatile in different situations. First, let's talk about vocabulary for specific scenarios. As you've probably noticed, the words you use for one situation might not be the same as the words you'd use in another. For example, the phrases you use when shopping can be very different from those you'd use when asking for directions or traveling. Take shopping, for instance. A common phrase you'll hear at stores is, "How much is this?" or "Do you have this in a different size?" These are simple, everyday phrases, but they can be expanded based on the situation. For example, if you're in a clothing store, you might ask, "Do you have this in a medium?" or "Can I try this on?" The more words you add to your shopping vocabulary, the more comfortable you'll be. You might also hear phrases like, "I'm just looking, thank you," or "I'll take it, please." These are common ways to express your intent without overcomplicating things. Now, let's consider asking for directions. This is one of those scenarios where you'll need vocabulary that's specific to getting from one place to another. Instead of just asking, "Where's the station?" you might ask, "How do I get to the train station from here?" Or, "Could you tell me the fastest way to the bus stop?" Learning specific phrases like "turn left," "go straight ahead," or "it's just around the corner" will help you navigate conversations with locals and make you sound more confident when seeking information. The key here is to focus on the phrases that are frequently used when giving or receiving directions, as they will be most useful to you when you're out and about. Traveling, of course, presents a whole different set of vocabulary challenges. Imagine you're at an airport or a hotel. You might need to ask about your flight, like, "What time does my flight leave?" or "Where is gate B?" When checking into a hotel, you might need to say, "I have a reservation under the name," your name, or "What time is checkout?" These are simple yet essential phrases that will help you avoid confusion when you're traveling in English-speaking countries. Building a strong base vocabulary is essential in all these situations, but the real magic happens when you start expanding that vocabulary by adding more context-specific words. It's not just about knowing train station or hotel. It's about knowing the words that make your conversations flow more naturally. This might include learning how to describe things or people, express preferences, or ask for more details. For example, when you're shopping, you might say, "I'm looking for a gift for my friend," or "I prefer something in black." These phrases allow you to be more specific about what you need and help you engage in more dynamic conversations. Another important part of vocabulary expansion is focusing on expressions and idiomatic phrases. English is full of them, and they can make you sound more fluent and comfortable. For instance, instead of saying, "I'm very happy," you could say, "I'm over the moon," or "I'm thrilled." These types of expressions help convey emotion in a more natural way. Similarly, you might say, "I'll get back to you," when referring to follow-up actions, or "It's not my cup of tea," when referring to something you don't enjoy. These idioms can feel more informal and conversational, which is why they're so useful in everyday language. But how do you find new words and phrases to learn? This is where curiosity plays a huge role. Language learning isn't just about memorizing words from a list. It's about actively seeking out new vocabulary in real-life contexts. A great way to do this is by consuming English media. Movies, TV shows, and podcasts are fantastic resources because they expose you to how people actually speak in real-life situations. For instance, if you're watching a sitcom or a drama, listen carefully to how the characters interact. You'll notice that certain expressions or phrases are used repeatedly, and you can add those to your vocabulary. Reading books is another powerful way to expand your vocabulary. Whether you're reading fiction, nonfiction, or articles online, you'll come across new words and expressions that you might not encounter in a textbook. The key is to read actively. When you come across a word you don't know, take a moment to look it up, understand how it's used, and try to incorporate it into your conversations. Don't worry if you don't fully understand a word at first. Over time, you'll start to recognize it in different contexts, which will help you retain it better. Podcasts, especially, are a goldmine for expanding vocabulary. There are podcasts tailored specifically for English learners, but even listening to general English-speaking podcasts can help. For instance, if you're into technology, you could listen to a podcast about tech trends. This will not only help you learn common English phrases related to that field, but also introduce you to more specialized vocabulary. As you listen, Take note of words or phrases that you don't know and look them up later. The key to expanding your vocabulary is to never stop learning. The more you expose yourself to English in different contexts, the more words and phrases you'll absorb. Don't just stick to one way of learning. Mix things up. Watch a movie, listen to a podcast, read a book, and try to incorporate what you've learned into your daily conversations. Even when you're speaking with others, try to use new vocabulary that you've recently encountered. This will help solidify those words in your memory. Another great technique is to keep a vocabulary journal. Whenever you come across a new word, write it down and note the context in which you found it. Then, try using that word in sentences of your own. This active engagement with the word will help you remember it better. You can also review your vocabulary journal regularly to refresh your memory and track your progress. Lastly, remember that expanding your vocabulary is an ongoing process. You'll never reach a point where you know all the words in English, and that's okay. The goal is to continually learn and grow, using the language in real-life situations. It's about becoming more comfortable and expressive with English, whether you're shopping, traveling, or just chatting with friends. In conclusion, the key to expanding your vocabulary lies in curiosity and regular practice. By focusing on real-life scenarios, such as shopping, asking for directions, and traveling, you can learn specific words and phrases that make your conversations more dynamic. Supplementing this with media consumption, like movies, books, and podcasts, will expose you to even more vocabulary in different contexts. Keep learning, stay curious, and soon you'll notice just how much more fluent and confident you feel in English.